Hi everyone, thank you Peter. Welcome. We're going to have a great time today. I think we will certainly have some emotions flushed up from the unconscious mind. Sometimes I show movies that are very metaphysical. Sometimes they're pretty seemingly extreme, and they're also mind watchers, flushers of deep emotions. I wouldn't say today's movie has any overt metaphysical meaning. It's not you'll go away and go, wow, what a spiritual movie David showed today. But actually it is very, very helpful for forgiveness, for cleaning the mind. And we had the polls this week coming in, and I'll read the topics of our combined poll, both the English poll and the Spanish poll, so you can have an idea of the themes that we're going to be looking at today for our healing. I think this is going to be such an experience today that I feel by the end of the day you're not going to think of yourself in the same way. This is kind of like a roto-rooter. We're just going to expose and vacuum a lot of ego beliefs that are so tightly protected and so buried in the unconscious mind and so kept hidden that you may notice yourself reacting to some of the scenes and to some of the words and things that you see in this movie. This is based on the events of maybe about 5 years ago. So these are events that took place, and the movie is going to be giving us a glimpse at some events that took place 5 years ago, but I think they're very relevant for us, for our forgiveness and coming to peace of mind. So our combined poll coming in at number 1 was unwinding from people-pleasing. I noticed even last week when I showed the devil's advocate that I stopped the movie in the scene where the Charlize Theron, Marianne, was putting green paint, rolling green paint on the wall, and I stopped it and talked a little bit about people-pleasing, and I noticed how that struck a chord. And that's because people-pleasing is accepted as natural and normal in this world. It's actually a defense mechanism that was made up by the ego to keep you from knowing who you are. And yet the ego made up the whole world and all the people so that the identity or the self-concept, this false self-concept that God didn't create, would be accepted as a replacement for true nature of the Christ, of pure spirit, of pure love. So this people-pleasing is an addiction, it is an obsession, it is the defense against the truth. There's absolutely nothing helpful about it. It comes from a death wish, and whenever you're people-pleasing, all it's doing is it's reinforcing your identity as a body. It's a body identification defense mechanism that is so accepted that when you start to look at the extent of it with mom and dad and brothers and sisters and children, with co-workers, with bosses, with everything in this world of time and space. Even with pets, like the bodies of the pets, those are part of the self-concept. Everything that's perceived is part of the self-concept. Even the stars, the galaxies are part of the self-concept. The trees, the mountains, the oceans, the rivers, everything perceived is part of a denial of the truth. It's, as Jesus says in the workbook, that the world was made as an attack upon God, a place where God can enter not. And we're going to look at the full extent of that misidentity, because the core of that is a body identification. And then on top of the body identification, there's a gender identification, being identified with as a man or a woman, being identified with masculine traits or feminine traits and characteristics. And then it just goes on from there, projecting the world and the environment, and everything is tied into this self-concept. But the first in the combined pole is unwinding from people-pleasing, and I happen to think this is one of the best movies you will ever see that will help you unwind from people-pleasing. I mean, this is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is an 11. This is so good for getting at people-pleasing. The second in the poll, second theme, was personal strength versus real strength. You know, when we talk about powerful people, most of the time people are talking about their personality, or that they have a lot of money, or that they have a strong presence, a dominating presence. When you talk about personal strength versus real strength, a lot of times people think of Olympic athletes as having personal strength, or people that are famous, or very, very, they have high status and so on and so forth. People associate a lot of things with personal strength, and that's always egoic. There is no such thing as personal strength, because the ego made the personal, and strength is of God. When people get into arguments about power, I always just say, well, all power is of God, meaning all power is of spirit or of love. Love is powerful because it's the only law there is. It's the law of heaven, and there is no other. There is no opposite to love. So love is all-powerful, God is all-powerful, and everything that goes for power in this world is a distortion, and it's just a projection of the ego. So when we talk about real strength, we're talking about the strength of following the Holy Spirit and Jesus, because that's where you find your happiness, your joy, your peace, and any sense of, if I say the mind is powerful, I'm talking about the divine mind. I'm not talking about the mind that believes in the ego. That's another trick. That's a way to attempt to weaken the mind by not recognizing the mind's natural state as divine, as created by God. The third one is the authority problem, and I would say anything at all that you are upset with or perceive as challenging or difficult in this world, whether it's poverty or it's fame or it's all the versions of guilt, status, anything that you find challenging in this world is because of one belief, the belief that you're something that you're not. The authority problem is basically Jesus' way of saying, God authored you as a spirit, and you exist and live as spirit. Your true reality is spirit. You live in a state of grace forever because your reality is only spirit. And the authority problem is the belief that you can separate from your source, separate from God, and make up an identity that's unlike the real identity, Christ. And believe me, the body identity is a sorry substitute for the glory of God and the glory of Christ. It's not even close. There is nothing valuable about the body per se. We could say that the ego made it so the Holy Spirit can use it as a communication device, and in that sense you could say it has temporary value as a communication device. But then as you go much deeper, you start to realize communication is actually beyond words, and it's beyond the body entirely, and that's just, it's like you use a knife and a fork and a spoon to eat, but you don't have to identify being a spoon. You guys watched The Matrix, right? There is no spoon. That was the teaching of The Matrix. The little boy. When Neo's like, what does it mean? There is no spoon. What is truth? There is no spoon. Now, you may use the spoon to eat while you're identified with the body, but the whole point is to forgive the world and wake up, and there is no spoon in heaven. You don't need a spoon. There's no need for food. There's no body to feed in heaven. So the body is just a useful device that can be used by the Holy Spirit. And the authority problem is the belief that the body is valuable in and of itself. That the body has some kind of seeming intrinsic value. Ken's show, I think on Thursday, it was Above the Battleground, and basically there's a beautiful quote in there that, anything that you invest in the body or you believe you can still get through the body is murder. That's what it is. We're not used to thinking of murder in terms of using a body to get anything, but actually to Jesus, he's saying, yeah, all your difficulties are coming from a body identification. If you had spirit identification, if you are identified with the I am presence that's prior to time, you would see that all is love, all is glory, that there are no problems. So all perceived problems in time and space are generated from the authority problem. One belief, the belief that I can make myself any way I want to be in time and space. That's the authority problem. And the solution to the authority problem is the atonement, which is, I accept the correction that I am as God created me. I can never change that. Happily, I'm as God created me, and I would not wish to be something else other than what God created me as, because that's where my happiness is. My happiness is in heaven. My happiness is knowing who my source is. My happiness is love. My happiness is joy. But this is spirit identification. I think in the Bible, Jesus said, that which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the spirit is spirit. There it was, 2,000 years ago. All we need is one sentence from Jesus, and you can ride that carpet all the way back to the kingdom of heaven from one little red letter sentence. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, that which is born of the spirit is spirit. St. Francis used that too in the 1200s, and then he followed it up with, I now am born again, mainly saying, I'm going for the spirit, I'm going for God, I'm not going for the flesh. So the authority problem is the root of everything. Even some of you who color your hair know that if you color your hair, sometimes if you get down there, you see the roots are still the color. Sometimes the coloring doesn't go all the way to the roots. Oh, I got some roots going on there. I don't know anything about coloring hair. It's enough for me to shave it off. But that the root of every single difficulty is the authority problem. Make no mistake. You're never upset at any person, place, or thing. You're never upset at the environment for the reason you believe. It's just the belief that you can be something that you're not is very disturbing. But it's pushed out of awareness. Most people don't wake up in the morning and open their eyes and go, oh God, there's still a body. Damn. It's just so accepted as an identity. Woke up, get out of bed, dragging the comb across my head. The Beatles, it's just another day. It's so accepted. It's so accepted. It's the authority problem, but it's so ingrained and accepted that if you just begin to question it, you are on the road to heaven. Just through the beginning of questioning the belief in the body, that your identity is a body, you are on a fast track to heaven. But how many people wake up in the morning and think, I am not a body? How many wake up and think, I am not a man, or I am not a woman? How many wake up and think, I have 0 masculine qualities and traits and 0 feminine? I'm not even androgynous. I can't pull from both because I'm none of them. I am a spirit. I am spirit. You see how radical this is? It has to go way beyond the body identity and everything associated with the body. And this movie is really good at getting at gender identity. It's actually quite a good movie for that, because you're going to be watching these events that occurred back starting around, we'll say 2016 is basically the time when these events are occurring. And when you watch it, just notice your emotions coming up, because whatever you're reacting to from this movie, it just is giving you an inroads into what you believe about yourself. That's what this movie is for. It's a good movie for showing you what you believe about yourself. Next one, coming in number 4, undoing male-female roles. There it is. That's our theme, and that is going to be a huge opportunity today to watch this movie and undo male and female roles. And the last one is guilt around sexual thoughts and desires. That actually came in 4th, I think, in the English poll and last in the Spanish poll. But sexual thoughts and desires, we'll say, are distorted miracle impulses, and so if you're attracted to the body, you will also be repulsed by the body. If you believe the body can be attractive, it's just, remember, it's a learning device. So it's actually, the Holy Spirit is just a neutral learning device. But if you believe it can be attractive or repulsive, those are just 2 sides of the ego's judgments about the body. The ego actually hates the body, because even though it made the body, it now considers the body as not a good enough home for it. Talk about never satisfied. I can't get no satisfaction. It made the body, and now it hates the body because it's not good enough for it. It thinks it deserves a better home. It breaks down, seems to grow old, get sick and die, and the ego's like, come on, a mobile home's better than this. Something, it is not too happy with that. And then when the mind, sleeping mind, says, but wait a minute, I thought you made it to help me, to protect me. And then the ego just pushes the question out of awareness. It can't handle. Talk about hypocrisy. It has no answer when the mind says, but you said it would protect me, and it's not protecting me very well. Yeah, push the question out of awareness into the unconscious mind. Don't even ask that. The ego doesn't want to even hear that question again. So I thought, first of all, when I watched this movie, I said, what are some of the themes that come up in this movie? When I watch this movie, what are some of the topics and themes? I think these can be really helpful inroads to forgiveness. Because if I read some of these off, I know you're going to say, at some point you had an issue with some of these. I wrote down womanizing, sexism, greed, pride, stereotyping, hypocrisy, cover-up, lies, abuse of power, and news as big business. And the last one I put down, I just couldn't resist. It's NDA. Does anybody know what an NDA is? A lot of times, somebody usually knows, but most of the times when people are into spirituality, they don't know what an NDA is. It's a legal term. Non-disclosure agreement. They're very popular now in big organizations. You get hired by an organization, you have to sign an NDA. Basically, you can't say anything bad about the organization. You have to agree that you're muzzled. Talk about no private thoughts. I thought, well, that's like a representation of the desire for thoughts to stay private and to perpetuate secrets, NDA. Because in this movie, you'll find that these news journalists that are hired by this news company, they are facing the same emotions that all humans go through, but when you go on and you sign your contract to get paid, it's all about getting paid. You have to sign an NDA. These are also, I think, with the last administration that was in the United States, there was NDA agreements all over the place. Everybody who got hired had to sign an NDA. This is kind of a business, corporate way of trying to protect itself from all these things I just mentioned. It's trying to cover itself to make sure the thoughts don't get out. And so that generates a whole world of secrecy, and NDAs are part of that. That came across my mind today, NDA. I said, yeah, probably nobody, most people don't even know what it means. Eric was like, non-disclosure agreement. Can you imagine working in a place where you have a non-disclosure agreement? Actually, Jesus wants you to have an FDA, a full disclosure agreement. And believe me, this movie will give you an FDA today. That's also Food and Drug Administration, but no, we'll leave that out. This is a Jesus Christ full disclosure agreement. When you agree to listen to the Holy Spirit, you agree to bring all the unconscious hidden beliefs, all the hidden emotions, all the hidden thoughts to awareness, to the light, so they will disappear in the light. But the ego is all about privacy and secrets, and that's why if any of you go to work for somebody and they say, oh, you have to sign an NDA, yeah, I would walk out the door. I don't particularly like the idea of non-disclosure agreements. I'm all for complete exposure. Let's be transparent. Let's be authentic. Let's be open. How else are we going to heal? We don't need to be hiding and protecting things, because who are we protecting them from? Are we thinking we're going to hide them from the Holy Spirit and keep ourselves separate from the light? That's not really a good motive for anything, secrets or anything like that. So a little bit of context. I mentioned greed and money. The context of this movie is that in this day of corporations owning many things, there are people who own news outlets. Imagine, it's one thing to own a book publishing company where you can print the kind of ideas and words you want on the books. It's a way of distributing. I think in some of the countries of the world it's called propaganda. If you want to influence people, you either take a plane and you drop little leaflets, but now people are pretty much onto it, like, yeah, what are you trying to convince me of now? You're dropping leaflets from planes. But most people know that using Facebook, using social media, using news media outlets, that's a way of sharing ideas. Well, the ego also likes to share its ideas. That's why we have NDAs. That's why there are all these laws of privacy and protection. There are secrets that different organizations around the world, different governments try to hide. We have in the United States CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. I think intelligence is not the word I would use for spying on people. That I would use another word, maybe like stupidity. But we'll say CIA, it's greatly feared, and I guess if you go to Russia, it's KGB. There's different, every country's got their own little spy agencies, and they call intelligence, but they're basically spying on each other. And with news media, we have an interesting day where we've had an explosion ever since the Industrial Revolution, and then we've had the information explosion, computers, now we have devices, smartphones, tablets, computers, and you have news agencies that are owned by people that are very, very, very wealthy. So in this movie, there's a guy, he's originally born in Australia, but his name is Rupert Murdoch, and he's an Australian-born American media mogul, they call him mogul. He owns this company called News Corp, and he's the owner of hundreds of local, national, and international publishing outlets around the world. He has 2 sons. Okay, it's a dynasty, it's a publishing dynasty. And they own one of the major news media outlets in the United States, Fox. So they basically can control the content that they put on their news. Because the owners of it, they can publish anything they want, from politics to their perspective on food to anything that you can imagine. That's what happens when you have a news media that's basically owned by a conglomerate, and they basically can share the ideas that they want. It's no different from anything else. I mean, if you have a website, you can publish the ideas that you want to publish. If you have a news agency, you can publish that way. You can do it through podcasts. We have a couple new podcasts out now. You can do it in many, many different ways. But when it gets into a lot of money, then it's a business. And I don't know if you've noticed that, but the purpose of a business is to make more money. It's not so interested in the well-being and peace of mind of everyone on the planet. It's basically to make more money. And as they say, sex sells, drama sells, wild, sensational stories sell. And so if you want to be a successful news media corporation, the ego will use the body and the world and the events of the world to make more. Some of you have heard me talk about this more idea. Jesus says in the Beyond All Idols section of A Course in Miracles, what is an idol? Do you think you know? An idol is for more of something. It does not matter more of what. So, when the motive in this world is for more anything, more fill in the blank, you know it's coming from the ego. Because the present moment is all that there is. It's the gateway to eternity. It's the gateway to spirit, to happiness, to love. The present moment isn't more of anything. The present moment has to be uncovered. It has to be exposed as a reality, as the gateway to eternity. And everything of linear time has this more motive. And that's why when I read off a few of these things, I think you can see how they're related to linear time. Womanizing. In linear time, that's a problem. In heaven, no. Sexism. No problem in heaven. In time, it's a mess. Greed. Heaven, there is no greed. But linear time, there's greed. That's where the more comes in. More personal power, more money, more sex appeal, more skills, more abilities. Stereotyping, hypocrisy, cover-ups, lies, abuse of power, news as big business. You can see all of these are basically versions of the authority problem, of the belief that you can make yourself into something that you're not. Really, that makes it really simple. There's nothing more simple than the authority problem. Really that, once that is, you accept the correction for that, then that's heaven. You're back in heaven. There's nothing blocking you. Nothing can block you from love unless you want to be the author of yourself, unless you want to make an identity different than the one God created. So let's get to some specifics. There are a cast of actors and actresses in this. This is an ensemble cast of amazing actors and actresses. Charlize Theron, Nicole Kidman, Margot Robbie, Kate McKinnon. That's top of the line. And then there's John Lithgow plays the man who is the chairman, the CEO and chairman of Fox News, Fox television station in 20th Century Fox. And his name is Roger Ailes. So Roger Ailes is going to be a key person because he's a media consultant. He shapes perceptions, believes he can shape perceptions through influence of money, power, and control. And so he is the head, the chairman of Fox News, Fox Television, 20th Century. Again, Robert Murdoch is the owner of many, many news outlets and distributions around the world, and this is Fox. So Roger Ailes is, to give you a context, he's the one who's the executive, the CEO. Then you have the newscasters in this, and they are, we could say, to the world standards, blonde and beautiful. Megyn Kelly, Gretchen Carlson, Kayla, and Jess. It's just to name four. Charlize Theron, Nicole Kidman, Margot Robbie, and Kate McKinnon. And let's talk a little bit more about Roger. He's such a good media producer and media consultant that he's consulted with Richard Nixon, the president, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Donald Trump. During this movie, prior to Trump, running for president, there was Roger helping him consult on his image. He's an image maker. He uses money and seeming power and influence in this world to shape images, to build the image of politicians. And those were four presidents. He also, Rudy Giuliani, who worked for Trump, he was the mayor of New York City. Yeah, Roger shaped his image too, to help him become elected the mayor of New York City. So here we have a master image maker and image shaper, and you can see all of the components of the ego there: the fame, the money, the greed, the whatever makes the corporation money. And so we have a situation where Roger likes to hire beautiful women. That's going to make money because he wants the ratings to be the highest, and he wants to make the most money making news that he can. And so he hires blonde, beautiful women, and he not only hires them, but he tells them how they can dress. They can't wear pants. They have to wear skirts. And then one of these news reporters, the men who are co-anchors with her, start to joke. Their sexism jokes, their stereotypes. They call her the skirt. Imagine being on the air broadcasting to millions of people and having your co-worker say, "Oh, she's a skirt." Talk about objectifying women down to a skirt, being called a skirt on television, national television. So this, we're going to look at extreme forms of sexism. He's trying to figure out how to raise the ratings, so he gets them to wear short skirts, they can't wear pants, and then he says, let's get glass desks see-through desks so that they can film these women broadcasting the news with clear glass desk and in their skirts. And that's just the beginning of it. Roger, that's just the start. I mean, Roger, he thinks, I'm a media consultant, so I can shape the images, and I'm hired to make money. So he's going to use sexuality to sell the news, to keep the ratings up. And then when they get hired, they have a dress code, just no pants, skirts, and then they have the glass desk, and then they have to sign what? Non-disclosure agreements. So he hires them to look pretty and then muzzles them from sharing any of their emotions. And that's just the beginning. Now these are actual events that occurred in a news broadcasting corporation based in New York City in a high-rise, and they have entire floors of the high-rise. You know, they talk about China and the Ming Dynasty and Mao Zedong and all the Russian czars and everything. This is a modern-day czar kind of system in a high-rise in New York City that's broadcasting to millions of people. And I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg. When you get inside of this little menagerie, it is secrecy, privacy. It's people-pleasing to the max. You know, I've been practicing with our community for the last, 20 years, 20, 25 years, no private thoughts and no people-pleasing. Well, in case some of you who do write in a lot and say, I still don't get what you mean by no private thoughts and no people-pleasing. Well, we'll give you a contrast if you don't understand what people-pleasing is, because this is people-pleasing laid on so thick that it's like if you were making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it's just the peanut butter is so thick you can't even see the jelly. You don't even know that there's jelly there. It's just a hunk of inches of peanut butter. And this just shows that this is the ego's world. All of this is unreal because all of it's just generated by the ego. But the reason we're watching this movie is because you need to take a close look and see if you believe in any of it. Because if you believe in the tiniest part of it, then you believe in all of it. And it doesn't feel good. And that's why we watch movies like this as mind watchers. These are like our rotor-rooters for our mind. We're just like we're just going to stir up and get all these unconscious beliefs that are all based on the authority problem. We're going to get them into the surface. Because most people would say, well, if you look at society, there's some problems. And they might say racism and sexism, stereotypical thinking, stereotypes. You can go down through the whole thing, violence and on and on and on. But what Jesus does in the Course in Miracles is he simplifies it for us, and he says, all those things that you feel aren't right in the world, in the society, in the culture that you perceive, you may even see it in the people, but it's not in the people or the culture or the society. It's in your mind. And it's all rooted in the belief that you can create yourself. It's all rooted in the authority problem. It's all denying that God is your author. Because an author is the one who creates, who writes. And God authors in spirit. And God only authors in spirit. God doesn't author in any other way. Spirit creates spirit. Just like in this world, we get apples from apple trees, we get oranges from orange trees, we get peaches from peach trees, and in heaven, if you'll take my analogy a little higher, you get spirit from spirit. Spirit doesn't create matter. You know, God created man in his likeness and image, meaning the essence of mankind or humankind is spirit. That's what it means. God created man in his own image. It doesn't mean God thought, I'm going to make a body. You know, I've got nothing better to do. I'm going to make Adam and Eve, and I'm going to make a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and yeah, that's a good day's work. I'll put this, and then and say, don't eat from that tree. You know, this is all make-believe. God authors in spirit. God doesn't make Adam and Eve. God doesn't make the world of time and space. God doesn't know what male and female mean. God doesn't know masculine or feminine. These are artificial constructs and concepts that the ego has generated. And they're all based on one belief, and that's the belief you can create yourself. That you can be the author of yourself instead of be authored by God. So that's why this movie, I think, will be so helpful to us, because when you watch it, typically you do get engaged in what's happening. Let's roll the clock back to 2016. There's candidates vying for the presidency of the United States. There's a group of men and women that are vying for the Republican nomination and for the Democratic nomination. And as you might remember, Hillary Clinton won the Democratic nomination and Donald Trump won the Republican nomination. Megyn Kelly is one of the prominent reporters for Fox News, so she's even going to be asked to be a moderator with Donald Trump and Hillary, and moderators get to ask questions. So she's going to get to be right out in the spotlight with one-on-one with Donald Trump and asking him about some of his statements and so forth, because this is just the run-up to the presidential vote. And so this is the run-up. The vote comes in the first Tuesday of November, but this is 2016 as the months are coming up towards that event. So that's the time frame and the context. And then you get to really watch your mind as the events play out in terms of this movie. So I hope that is a good enough context for you. Because, I mean, Devil's Advocate was a ride. Dark City was a ride. We've had some good rides here, but I think maybe some emotions are going to get stirred up, because this movie is just basically showing a series of events back 5 years ago, and you get to go inside and see it up close and watch if your mind gets shocked by what you see, because the beliefs and thoughts in your mind are what is shocking. It's the ego is the shock, and the events, the characters and the events just play out just so we can get in touch with these ego beliefs and let them go. And that's really my prayer for today as we move into our breakout groups and then wrap up the day. Is I really pray that we can really experience a deep healing around gender differences, around perceptions of misuse of power, around perceptions of secrets, which are just the belief in private thoughts, around the belief that some people can distort propaganda for the purpose of money and greed. I want us to really be able to go on a ride where you can feel cleaned out and cleared out. And some of these pipes and these roots run really deep, because the authority problem runs really deep. So, enjoy the movie, and this is a mind watcher. Don't try to look for the Buddha to show up on screen or or Jesus. One of the, Margot Robbie, she plays Kayla. She loves Fox News. She's always wanted to work at Fox, and she considers her and her family, they're Jesus people. But actually, Jesus doesn't really have a lot to do with greed, private thoughts, secrets. Jesus is all about healing and exposing error and opening to the light. But even we get to see religious things in this, political things. It's a hodgepodge of mind-watching opportunity to really overlook the error entirely and look with the Holy Spirit to the light of truth. That's our goal. So I'm not like with Devil's Advocate and Dark City, I'm not saying, you have to be on the carpet ride. I was saying keep your fingers in. Just try to be the observer today. Just really, really pray to stay with Jesus and the Holy Spirit and just observe this. Because that is the way that you will heal, is through being with the Spirit and not buying the bait of the ego. So enjoy the movie, and I will come in on some particular scenes. I have to say too, Charlize Theron, she plays Megyn Kelly so well, with the voice, with the hairstyle, with the face. I know people who have watched this and they thought, is Megyn Kelly playing herself? She takes on the role so well of Megyn Kelly that sometimes if you look at the pictures side by side of Charlize in this movie and Megyn, it's like, wow, that is amazing. So she does, I think this movie was nominated for Golden Globe Awards, it was nominated for SAG Award, it was nominated for BAFTA Awards, it was Academy Award nominations came. Admittedly, some were for hairdressing and hairstyling, but still, that's not often you win. You can be nominated for Best Actress and supporting and things, and hairstyling. This movie is a masterpiece of fleshing up projection of differences in gender roles. Enjoy the movie. Okay, so you get the context of the setup. She works in a building where she's now going to be a moderator for the presidential debate. The Murdochs, Rupert Murdoch, who owns all the news outlets that I mentioned, and his sons, they're up on the 15th floor. They're up there and they're saying, enough is enough, kind of ask Trump the tough questions. And meanwhile, Roger, her immediate boss, shares a lot of the views, has been actually consulting to help build the image. And then you have the co-workers and the people that she works with, and then she's just throwing up. This is what happens when you have a self-concept that has competing aspects, and this is the way the ego set it up. If your boss and the owner disagree, and the co-workers and the people around you, she's also married, she has children, you can see how complex the self-concept is of just a personality, much less the world that surrounds that personality. There's all these conflicting aspects of the self-concept. That's the way the ego set it up. That's called fragmentation. There's no unity with that. There's no unified mind with fragmentation. It's a fragmented perceived world that the ego has projected as an alternate identity. It's not the Christ. It's made to take the place of Christ. And that's what this whole time-space cosmos is, including the personality self and everything that surrounds the personality self. So, in this case, she's throwing up, and she'll be wondering, whether it was the coffee that she drank and where she got it and all this and that. But we know from A Course in Miracles that all illness is mental illness, and what he means by that is that when you have a false perception of yourself based on this authority problem, that is the ego, and that it will generate a world of unreality. But as long as you believe in the ego, you believe in that generated world. You believe in that body. You believe in that concept of male or female. You believe in jobs and careers. You believe in pay raises. You believe in houses and cars. You believe in children and parents and co-workers. Everything is generated from this authority problem of believing you have separated from God. So this is a good context, because now she's already pretty well known, but now she's been chosen as a moderator of a national debate. So now there are literally hundreds of millions, of people tuning in to watch a debate and watch the moderator and watch the candidates. And so in terms of what we call the public eye, when you go out there, we know this with famous people, we know the struggles that Marilyn Monroe went through, we know the suicidal thoughts. When everything gets magnified, the more you get identified with the projected world. And the more that you come inside to the Holy Spirit and Jesus, and you come disidentified from that body and that world, that's where the peace comes in. So these are the metaphysics that Jesus is giving us as a context for going within to the kingdom of heaven. And we're seeing them played out in great extremes in this movie, just so we can get the lesson. We can really see it for ourselves. So we're ready to go. She's going to be moderating, and then and Donald Trump is going to have some pretty direct interactions with Megyn. So she's going from Megyn Kelly, Fox News reporter, to the talk of the United States. After you go on national television, you are part of the discussions at breakfast in all over the United States of America. And so she's ready to, it's going to move into that in this next scene. Okay, now you're starting to get a little bit of an idea of the people-pleasing. You can see in this elevator scene that you have three women that are riding up together, and the silence is telling, because it's the thoughts underneath the silence in that elevator that are showing us an extreme example of people-pleasing. And again, it all starts with the ego. It starts and ends with the ego. It's not three people that have intensity and tension and stress between them. It's the ego's is the tension. The ego is the stress of believing something that you're not. This shows you a much broader definition of people-pleasing than I've talked about before. People-pleasing seems to be between people, but it's not. The ego is the belief in the mind, and the filter in the mind that the ego is using to project this world is where the tension is. The tension is always in the mind, not between the characters, not between the environments. The tension is in the mind, coming from the body identification. So that's a little bit deeper perspective about people-pleasing. To believe that you're a body is people-pleasing. To believe that you're a man or a woman is people-pleasing. It's not between the people, it's the belief in the mind of the identity that is where this defense mechanism arises. And it gets projected out onto the people as if it's an interpersonal problem. This happens with relationships, it happens here. We can see it in this work setting where you can just see it on the looks on the faces, this hush-hush, this atmosphere of oppression, this atmosphere of secrecy, this atmosphere of you better watch out, you better really watch out what you say and what you do. You better watch out how you dress. You better watch out who you talk to. This is the ego's world. And it's all made to protect the ego and keep the ego in mind. The ego wants to exist. The ego wants the mind to continue to believe in it. And so it makes a very complex, intricate world. Talk about a cobweb. It's a spider web of images, and the ego is trying to stay underneath those images and protect itself from being exposed. So I said earlier, that's the whole point of spiritual awakening, is to expose the ego belief system, because that's the only way that you escape these intense emotions, this anxiety, this pressure, this stress. It's not the behavior that's generating the stress. The behavior is the effect, but the stress is being generated from the mind's belief in the ego. And that is what the authority problem is. It's the misidentification with the body. So you see how clever the ego is to project it out onto many bodies, onto many circumstances and situations. That's why it made the world, so it would never be discovered. And that's why it's so rare. That's why until Jesus came along, there was no contrast. It was just dark until the light first penetrated through the darkness and shone in its brightness. There was no contrast. Imagine before Jesus, I don't think they had a psychological term called discernment, but imagine the Greeks and some of the ancient communities trying to talk about discernment. Discernment between what and what? If it's all dark, it's hard to talk about discernment. It's 2021, we have a book called A Course in Miracles that goes through the discernment between the ego and the Holy Spirit, between the darkness and the light. And so you can see how much closer you seemingly come to awakening when you begin to start to realize the full extent of this belief system. It's not that people are to blame, because the ego peopled the world to protect itself. So, yeah, it's good to watch a movie like this where you can see kind of these blatant, vulgar judgments, condemnations, put-downs that have been seemingly internalized and seemingly acted out in the workplace. But ultimately, for these three women that are riding up the elevator, there's a tension there, and they're not talking to each other, but you might say they have an awareness something is off. And that's where it always starts for us in our own life, in our own minds. Something's off. Something is off about fear. Something is off about stress. Something is off about anxiety and tension. We were created as beings of light, of love, of joy, of happiness, of peace. And this filter, we'll call the ego belief and the ego filter, it's not supremely happy. In fact, in workbook lessons 163 and 167, Jesus says that death is any experience that is not extreme happiness. Anything that is not extremely happy is death. That's a much broader definition of death than we've grown up with, thinking it's organic or thinking that the body dies and bodies die. It's way beyond that. The death is the death wish. It is the ego belief system, and that's where the tension comes in of a false identity. So it's actually, at this point of the movie, it's just beginning, because as with the ego covers itself with the world of time and space, but even in what we're seeing as this workplace, there are layers upon layers of lies and cover-up. And that's why as you invite the Holy Spirit and Jesus, most of what you perceive that you go through in the process of awakening, so to speak, is uncovering. You're just uncovering the depth of the ego's deception. You're uncovering the depth of the belief system that covers over the truth. So it's like you're going down in an elevator down. It's like Dante's descent into hell. That's actually the way most people perceive it, as they start to go deeper into the mind and towards and through the unconscious mind. It just seems to be like there's layers and layers of darkness and deception. And that's why true spiritual awakening and authentic awakening is not just sweet affirmations. I remember Michael Ledwith, the theologian, in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? He said it's like affirmations are like putting a little smear over the darkness. You know, the ego laughs at affirmations. The ego's like, okay, go ahead, throw me some more affirmations, because as long as you believe in it, then the affirmations are just icing on the cake. It's not getting into the cake of mud that's underneath that sweet icing. Those affirmations, have some effectiveness, but it's part of turning your mind around. But you have to get down to the roots of the darkness. So we'll see where it goes here. They are there. They seem to be working in an environment that's quite oppressive in many ways, especially if you have a belief that you're a woman. It's extreme, tense feelings that are covered over, and the reason they're not spoken of freely or exposed is it's a fear of losing one's job. It's a fear of destroying one's career. It's not speaking up because the money motive, the survival of the body motive, the motive to maintain a body identity is so strong, is part of the human condition, that things are covered and not spoken up. And then you can just feel the heaviness of that. We all know it. We've all felt there was some kind of compromise going on. But we didn't really know what the compromise was, or the full extent of the compromise. And now we're beginning to start to get a peek at it, like, wow, it's this ego belief and this body identification that is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. I remember the fairy tale, The Princess and the Peas. Didn't she have like 20 mattresses? And she was on the top mattress, but she couldn't sleep because there was a pea underneath all those 20 mattresses, and she was very sensitized and couldn't sleep. That's a pretty good analogy for the mind. There's this little pea underneath, which is the ego, a tiny mad idea a little puff of nothingness, and now even though the mind has put layers to try to block that out, to block the darkness out of awareness and distract itself with images, that little pea is still underneath the mattress, and Jesus is saying, "Let's go. I'll help you toss some of those mattresses aside. Let's get down to the basement. Let's get down to the bottom and find that here." Okay, here we go. So you notice the sign, the big sign before they went into the tunnel: stay in line. This is the ego. Always stay in line with fear. The ego is trying to tell the mind, don't think you can escape. The ego is threatening the mind, saying, if you go the other way and you go for the light and healing, it's going to end bad. Because the ego is pretty sure that it doesn't know what the light is, but it knows there's a threat above it, and it doesn't know what that threat is, but it feels threatened. It's a fearful belief. It's a death wish. Of course, it feels threat, but still, its message is always stay in line. Don't rock the boat. Don't risk losing what you have gained in this world. Don't risk the loss that the ego says will surely come if you start following your heart, following the spirit. So this is where you find yourself making the turn towards healing, but the ego is quite strong about staying in line. Don't do it. Don't go for it, it says. It's always afraid of healing. Jesus even comes out in the Course and says, your fear is not crucifixion. Your fear is redemption. Because the fear is coming from the ego. The ego is afraid of the light. It's afraid of healing. Your fear is resurrection. Your fear is redemption. And once you start to get a hint of that, then that's where you start to build your faith. Your trust starts to deepen, like, I'm not going to be held back playing these games of compromise and trying to cling to a personal identity when my real identity is far beyond this perception of form. So Megan Kelly is the main character here, and now she herself has experienced this perception of something being done to her by Roger 10 years ago. She's hearing more and more, and she knows people are watching and looking to her, and you might just say that's the pressure in the mind of still trying to hold on to a compromise. I mean, many of us grew up in a world where we thought compromise was a good thing. You know, people would always say, you're going to have to compromise in your relationships, you're going to have to compromise in this world. And we were told compromise is a good thing. And I do remember the first time I read about compromise in the Course, where Jesus said, salvation is no compromise of any kind. He's also saying that atonement is a total commitment. In the end, spiritual awakening is not about partial anything. It's not about partially believing what the Course is teaching. In fact, Jesus comes out and says, this Course will be believed entirely or not at all. And the reason that entirely is thrown in is because that's the only way that the healing can occur. You can't partially believe in the Holy Spirit's healing escape. You have to completely believe in it. Also, this morning, going through this section, be vigilant only for God and His kingdom, basically saying you have to believe fully in God, which is really talking about forgiveness, before you can simply be as God created you. With the separation state of mind, then you have to be vigilant while you believe there's these two thought systems, one of love and fear. You have to be vigilant for the love, vigilant for God, vigilant for the light. Just saying, I am committed to making no exceptions to the lessons. I am committed to not wavering and compromising in regard to my peace of mind, in regard to my integrity of mind. And how this plays out is how it plays out in the dream. It plays out with our relationships. It plays out with our seeming work environment, co-workers, families, neighbors. It plays out seemingly in form, but the lesson is in the mind. And the lesson is hear only one voice. Hear the voice for God. And hear only that voice. And in that you return to a state of being, a state of just pure being. Being as God created me. I am as God created me, as the state of being. But you have to go through first the vigilance of believing in forgiveness, in looking past the error with the Holy Spirit. So these kind of situations in movies you can see progressively as we go through this movie with our main character there, Megan Kelly. She has had experiences, she sees herself going back and forth, and now she's going through a dark tunnel, symbolically, with her husband, and she's just passed the sign, stay in line. And she really has to start to make a decision whether she's going to come out for equality, come out for exposure, come out from loyalty to persons and loyalty to career and loyalty to organizations, and let what needs to get exposed be exposed. That's always the fear in relationships. There's always this sense of something in the past or something unconscious that is lurking, and how willing are you to let it be exposed? Exposed to be free of it. That's really what we're dealing with our mind training. What was the movie we just watched, Wandering but Not Lost? The monk had to go out on the road for 4.5 years to face what he still was dealing with in his mind. After he had a life where from childhood everything was kind of taken care of, then he leaves the convenience and the comfort of the monastery to go out and face what was still unexposed. And you could say that is just an example of what it is for everyone. As Jesus tells us, you have to go through the darkness to the light. He doesn't tell us run away from darkness. He doesn't tell us to repress and deny the darkness. He doesn't say push it away. He says you have to go through the darkness to the light. In other words, you have to allow those upsetting emotions and those uncomfortable feelings come to the surface to really look closely at what is believed. And Jesus assures us the more you look at fear, the less you'll see of it. In other words, the more you look at it in your mind, the less you'll see of it reflected in the world. The less you'll see of it in your mind. The more you expose the error, the more you are ready for the light and accepting the correction. So that's the very purpose for everyday mind training, is to face these beliefs and these emotions as they come to the surface. Okay. Okay. Very good. Well, that is our movie for today. We can see again how everything that seems to be success in the world, fame, money, prestige, possession, accumulation, that's why Jesus was pointing us in the direction to go within, to the kingdom of heaven, because he saw beyond the tricks of the ego and pointed us in the most direct way where the peace could be found, which is within. And it seems like, just like the stories throughout history, the Tower of Babel, trying to build a tower to reach God, thinking God is in the sky, or trying to associate success and manifesting things in the world with being in God's favor. All these things are now being exposed as just a trick. They're all part of the same trick of the ego to try to find some kind of certainty or happiness in linear time, and it's not there to be found. So these kind of movies with the commentary and with the teachings really are extreme teaching examples, and in some ways this was a little different than our Devil's Advocate movie, although Charlize acted out dying in that hypothetical last week, and this week acted out more the time of ending the compromises, of starting to stand up and speak what needs to be spoken in order to come to a state of equality, a state of rest. But even that equality is in our mind. It's the Holy Spirit in our mind. It's not to be found in the form and in the bodies. It can be witnessed through a new way of looking at the world, but it's not to be found in quotas. It's not to be found in legislating equality, as much as the ego would have us believe that somehow you can work it out in form. The one thing the ego doesn't want the mind to see is that the form is just a projection of what's going on in the mind. It's a projection of consciousness. So, I hope you had time to really pay attention to your emotions in this one. This one is a real good mind watcher for getting down to some of the deeper beliefs. And we'll, after a bit of a break, and Pete will send you toward that break, and when we have breakout groups, then please just let your emotions up. Whatever you were feeling during the movie, whatever you were experiencing, give yourself the permission to allow those things to come to the surface, because that's really the first step in healing. We have to allow these emotions up. And it just takes different forms. It could take the form of guilt or embarrassment or anger. It just can come in many different forms, but regardless of the form, it's really an opportunity to work through it and let it move through. And I feel like that's the value of these times we have now, is to carry on with it a bit. If people have questions, or if there's things that feel like they're unresolved, that have started coming up, and you want to go at it a little further to see if we can move through it even further. So I think Pete will just see if we can open it up. It looks like we've got a couple hands up, and if please just share your questions, or if you had insights or breakthroughs, share those for everybody to hear too, because that's really what this is all about, is really getting into the miracle and sharing those huge insights too. So we'll see what we've got here.
Sure. We've put the instructions in the chat, how to raise your hand, and you will be translated, so please speak slowly. So let's go to Vivian first. You can unmute.
Thank you. So this was a particularly deep movie for me. And I have a recurring theme that comes back to me that I don't quite understand. And I'm hoping, David, that you can shed some light on it for me. So I'm beginning to understand what no people pleasing means. It's much more vast than I realized after this movie. But I also get stuck when I think about the Course telling us to never tell a brother that he's wrong, or never make a brother fearful of you. And so that it sets up a good deal of confusion in me. So if you could speak to that, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the section you're referring to is that part called correction of error, where Jesus says, never correct a brother because he is always right, even if he is speaking insanely. His ego is speaking insanely. And, do not confound him, Jesus says. And what that comes to is basically that idea of mirroring, so that if a brother is just an opportunity for me to see what's coming up in awareness, the darkness that's arising, the correction is the function of the Holy Spirit and not the function of human beings. So the human beings and the mind that's sleeping seems to be able to contribute a willingness, just a willingness to heal, a willingness to have the darkness lifted out. It seems to be the part that we can offer and contribute. But forgiveness, as the Course teaches it, is learning to see that these are thoughts in the mind, and that they can be handed over or given over, and they can be escaped by giving up of the attack thoughts and the judgments. And the temptation through the ego is to see the error in the form, in the behavior, in the actions of our brothers and sisters. But once it's seen to be in the form, then it's protected from being forgiven or released. Because that's why the form was made, to kind of hurl it out there, to hurl it onto a body of a brother or a sister and see that something's been done to me against my will, is the way the ego reasons it. So the key I found in terms of releasing the pattern, or releasing that defense mechanism, is Jesus says that once you are willing to see that thoughts of being attacked and thoughts of attacking are the same, you will be willing to let them go. But the ego plays the trick of projecting those attack thoughts out into the victim role and the victimizer. And it doesn't really care which role you identify with. Either one will do for it to maintain this illusion of guilt. And that's why the Course is really asking us to bring everything back to our mind and to start to take a look at the idea of attack thoughts. That's lesson 23 of the workbook. When we make it that far, he comes right out and says, I can escape the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. But he's also helping prepare us to see that the thoughts of attacking and being attacked are the same. Because as long as we keep allowing the ego to project it out into the victim and victimizer, then that perpetuates the error. That's the way the ego, so to speak, stays in business. It uses the world by projecting those attack thoughts out as if they're two different roles. And during the breakout groups, some people noticed that, in terms of Roger, there's sometimes the attempt to project onto Roger as being the victimizer, but there was also a sense of sometimes seeing that Roger was a victim of something. I think even the main character, Megan Kelly, at one point, she said Roger had a very messed up childhood, as his parents were, I think, sending him off to camp as they were getting divorced and not telling him. So as a child, he comes home from camp and mom and dad are not mom and dad anymore. So she was, even there, she was starting to explore a little bit, like what must life have been for him. And that's how it seems to go in this world. Those that feel like they're abused can turn into abusers, and the cycle of seeming abuse and abuser just goes around and around and around. That's what time seems to be. It's always a cycle of guilt and shame and abuse and victimization. So that's really the convincing job that the Holy Spirit has as we work with the Course, because Jesus is knowing that the mind is so addicted to this pattern of guilt, and no one would even seem to come to this place without guilt. I have a friend, Alan Dollett, and his signature on his email, I've known him for years, but his signature on his email is always, seriousness causes reincarnation. That's what he puts on his signature. And what it interprets as long as you have guilt in the mind, then you'll be drawn to this game of the world to perpetuate that guilt. And yet, the Holy Spirit has a whole new perspective for this world, just as a teaching learning device to bring us home. And so the Holy Spirit has this very high, beautiful purpose. But I think you're raising the question of how, with such a repetitive pattern, it can feel like being stuck in a maze or something, because it's so heavily reinforced. That's the kind of status quo of how the world operates. And it's a very dark picture. It's very dark and pessimistic. So this is like, forgiveness is like a ray of hope, a beam of light shining into a darkened mind, saying, there's another way, there is hope. There is a way to escape. So in one sense, I'm glad that we show a series of movies, but it always does come up where you have a particular movie that really kind of touches something deeper and hits home a little bit deeper. And I know that's been very helpful in my life. There were times when I've would rent a movie or go to a movie theater, and it just would be like, oh, hard to stay with it because of the intensity of the emotion that was triggered. But I'm glad that you could feel it and come on screen for us to all join with you in this healing. Thank you, Vivian.
Okay, let's go to Muna next. You can unmute.
Hi.
Hi, Muna.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often think no one goes through sexual abuse. Unless they really want to heal so badly. It's such a rough ride. And of course, the healing rewards are massive because it's such a rough ride. And each time I feel like I'm getting somewhere, I'm even getting to the abstraction of my being and all of that. But then Jesus shows a movie like this, and bam, I'm right there with the fear. What I'm present to now is like this abject fear. And I think what I learned from this life is to be afraid and to give in to this fear. And I remember from the get-go, joining with the living miracles, I've always been afraid to show up, afraid to share, afraid to speak, ashamed that I'm afraid. And now I'm afraid to share that I'm afraid. And I just don't feel I have any resolution around this really primal, abject, intense fear. When Jesus says, when you fear, I totally understand what he's talking about. When he says draped with shame, I totally understand what I'm talking about. And of course, the victim in me says, it's not fair. I don't want to have all these intense feelings. I don't care if it's for the whole universe. What about me? What about me is this victim, but it just does not go away. But, and of course, in the world, how it showed up, it's the concept of a girl. And I knew this week, my heart was telling me it's about men and women and girls and boys. And because how it showed up in my life is I'm a tiny little girl with such a small and fragile body, and these massive, brutal men, like brutal force. That's how the ego takes me there, straight away into time and space, straight away into materialism. Men's bodies, solid, brutal, sexual bullies, and it's such a journey. And a lot of the time, I don't really appreciate it, and I just want to be like get that out because it is a huge private thought. I'm hugely grateful for the awakening that is coming with all this, and I wouldn't, change that for the world. But a lot of the time, it just feels so rough and so horrible, and the fear just never goes away. It just never goes away, and that's it. I give in to the fear, and now Jesus, is teaching me how to stand up to fear. I know it's fear of the ego. It reminds me of what they call in the world the Stockholm syndrome, where you're so terrified for your life, the anxiety about existence, like cutting edge existential crisis, that you side with your abusers against yourself. And I've always seen this mind movement, but it's just so difficult emotionally to come out of it. And now Jesus is teaching me, with ridiculous things like even a court case, just stand up for myself. It doesn't have to be against anyone, just show up for myself, stand my ground. It's like basic things to deal with just this primal fear that just never goes away. And I just wanted to share that because I'm so fed up with it. But thank you. an amazing movie.
Yeah, thank you, Muna. Every time we do speak up, every time we do stand up, and we do seem to get lots of opportunities in this earth experience for that. It's like slowly, it's like coming out of this dark intensity, intense fear. And so it seems to be that's what's required of us, to just keep showing up and standing up and standing up and speaking up. Many of us were raised with children are to be, seen but not heard, like keep it to yourself. It was part of the cultural conditioning. It was even part of the conditioning of our parents, and then it's very controlled form of communication, and a lot of stifling and smothering and smoldering and pushing down. That seems to be the way relationships are in this world, but that they don't reach their potential until we speak up, until we start to have the strength to speak up and to stand up, like you were just saying. And it can be court cases, it can be in different types of relationships, it can be saying something in public. That was a theme that the Kayla character said, to Megan, like, why didn't you didn't do anything? It happened to you and you didn't say anything. And Megan was like, well, yeah, I didn't want to lose my career. There's a fear of speaking up that's so heavily reinforced. Like there'll be a loss, a sacrifice, there'll be a cost, a price to pay. So I think as much as I talk about no private thoughts and no people pleasing, it does take quite a willingness and a courage, even for people that are opening to this new thought system. There's so much conditioning to keep things hidden, and so much shame around that's part of that hiding, that we're really step by step very bravely coming out more and more to speak it up. And that's such an important step. It can't be minimized. That's so important. We can't skip over that. Just the ego is saying, don't rock the boat, and if you speak up, it's just going to bring more darkness. It'll bring more on your head from speaking up. And so, yeah, there's lots and lots of secrets. It's almost like there's some kind of an agreement. Like in this movie, it was almost like there was like this agreement, like we're all here to join together to make money. Okay, we're all going to make money. We're all going to get benefit and make money, as if that is a value in and of itself. That's a trick in itself. But that was almost like the underlying thing, like we're here to make money, so don't rock the boat and don't blow it for all of us. I noticed that was being said a lot, like to Megan Kelly, like, well, you can interview and find another job. I've got a child. I can't just, if I get fired, then there's going to be a major loss there, or a group of us may all go down together. So it's this mentality that if there's some kind of underlying benefit, that you put up with all the other stuff just for this one benefit. But the real question is, what is that benefit? What is it that would be worth lying and covering up and all these secrets? What could possibly be worth it for all those mind games and lies? And really, that's what we're discovering now. None of us have liked the darkness that this world presents, but apparently we're learning from the Course that the reason the darkness appears is because we're actually attracted to something. There's some part of the game of human being, of time and space, that we think it serves us. We think there's actually a built-in benefit somewhere. and we're going to keep playing the game to get the benefit. And I think slowly we're starting to realize we have to be very intuitive with this whole game, because there's not really a benefit there. You know, wherever we thought it was worth it, it's not really worth it. You know, if this was like a poker game, Jesus is saying, don't put any chips in, like the chips being the power of your mind and your faith. Don't put any chips into this game. And certainly don't put all your chips into this game, because it can be you can get wiped out seemingly if you invest that way. So thank you for bringing this up. Both you and Vivian are really pointing out how it's pretty raw when you start to really go for the healing. There's a lot of, when you take the covers off, there's a lot of darkness that seems to be hidden under those covers, but yet that is what we must do. We have to have the courage and the faith to uncover it. And these kind of movies, that's what they're for. That's what they're for. So thank you, Muna. I appreciate it.
Okay, let's go to Marcos next. You can unmute there.
Hi, Marcos.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone. We try to not dramatize. If my house was burning now, it could be much easier to explain what happened. Everything that stopping to be connected here. It's unbelievable, and also funny too. Not too funny, but it's funny too. And the film was very strong, and I was into the room, quiet, and Juliana brought the information that there were probably 21 women and just myself as men, and the mind started to blame me. Why? Why cannot see what's happening? And to make the thing more easier, a friend, colleague, student remind us that everything is mind. There is no man, there is no woman. It's just story. Start to feel a little bit lighter. And in this moment, my mother called 4 times, screaming and upset and blaming because he's alone in the pandemic, and I'm not doing anything because I'm living in São Paulo. She lives in Rio, and it's so astonishing how many things happen to blame yourself, and every aspect conduces me to blame myself. But I think it's Jesus. He's saying, no, this is goofy, this is blah, blah, blah. But it's not easy. It doesn't like look a movie. You didn't show a movie, you show life. It's so strong. And even now, I almost could not share. I just decided to share after you said you should to share. I think that's it.
Good. We're all with you on that. We felt that exhale. We all are with you exhaling there, just like letting it out, the heaviness. Yeah, the heaviness. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's for all of us. Yes, that's for all of us, just to have the faith and hang in there. Thank you. Thank you, Marcos.
Thank you, Marcos. Okay, well, let's go to Ruth next. You can unmute there.
Hola, David.
Hi, David.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, it's again me. Again, it's me.
Me siento muy feliz.
I feel very happy.
Es que no sé,
I don't know. I don't want to sound like arrogant or something.
mientras que veía la película,
While I was watching the movie,
pues me sentía muy
I
feliz.
was feeling very happy because
Siento que he
I
perdonado
feel that I have forgiven
el papel de víctima,
the victim role,
el victimario.
role of the victimizer. I would only see the images. They didn't produce either anger or I didn't feel vulnerable or
Entonces iba observando mi
so I
mente,
was just observing or watching my mind and watching my emotions and they were not coming up and I was like, what's happening?
y yo debería estar ofendida.
And I should be offended
Están haciendo cosas
because they're doing these things to these women and no.
no.
So yeah, in some way I felt very happy that
De sentir paz,
I could feel peace and
de que no se estuviera moviendo
that nothing was really moving
en mi ser.
inside of me, in my being, in my mind.
Solo con todo esto que
Only
he
with
estado
all this that I have been experiencing in the past few days with work and
la que hablaba,
laziness that I was talking to you yesterday,
entendí que
I understood that
quiero,
what I don't want,
o sea, me juzgaba
well, I was judging myself because I don't want to work.
por eso me consideraba.
That's why I was considering myself as lazy and I was punishing myself, judging myself, and I was projecting outside. It's like everyone's lazy,
Todos están enfermos.
everyone's are sick, and I was projecting it all outside. But actually, the one that was punishing itself and criticizing for not wanting to work is me.
Entonces ahora
So now,
en el recreo
during the recess,
entregué
I felt that I wanted to give over those ideas of laziness. I was asking the Holy Spirit,
¿qué tiene de malo no
and
querer trabajar?
what's wrong with not wanting to work?
Porque el que quiere trabajar
Why the one that does want to work is good and the one that doesn't want to work is considered lazy?
simplemente
Simply, it's just an idea.
un concepto
It's a concept,
que yo a lo que, o sea, ya quiero renunciar a
yeah, that I want to really renounce to this world. And I understood that the one thing that I don't want is work in that world,
en ese mundo del
in that world of the ego,
tienes que renunciar
that you have to renounce to all these things of your being,
donde tienes que
where you have to
complacer y satisfacer
people please and satisfy and deny, go
las posesiones,
forward to money and possessions. And
eso ya no
really, this is the thing that I don't want in my life any longer. I've done it for a long time and I've never been happy.
pesar de que yo soy
Even though I'm so good in many things, I was never showing that off.
no era feliz,
I wasn't happy, so I could be good writing or talking. I would talk to a lot of people, and people, they were saying I have charisma, and I was teaching,
nunca mostraba
but I actually never showed all my potential because I wasn't happy.
a lo que voy es que
So what I'm trying to say is that definitely I don't want that.
que
But the doubt that comes up is, so the world of the ego is the one that has wealth, and the spiritual world is like poor? That's like the question that came to my mind, because now that I'm in the spiritual part, well, I've been for many years, well, healing my mind, but then I wonder, the spiritual life requires, well, I know it doesn't require sacrifices or denying myself, but then, yeah, I don't understand very well if the fact of being spiritual doesn't make me that we don't deserve any money or wealth, because one day you were saying that wealth and God doesn't go together. But then how do we do to live in this world if we're not gonna have money? That's where I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, basically is that if we have or don't have right to live well, that is no longer our goal. But the fact that it's no longer our goal, it doesn't mean that we're not gonna enjoy it or have it. That's what I'm like, that's like the doubt that I have right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, Jesus, that's something he's really teaching us, is that that wealth is thinking with God, or he calls it right-minded thinking. That's where the abundance and the wealth comes in, is with the thoughts of love and forgiveness. And then the ego's thinking is the poverty. But the reason it seems tricky in this world is that ego thinking, material wealth is part of the ego's thinking. More, bigger, possess, achieve, accumulate, accomplish. That's part of a poverty mindset, which is what the ego is. So you have all these natural gifts to give away, gifts of your attitude, your charisma, kindness, that want to come through and that are very important for you to give away, to keep it in awareness. You give it and extend it. And as you do that, if that's the focus, then whatever serves to help you do that in terms of form, that form will be provided by the Spirit. But it's not a personal sense of like owning it or possessing it. It's more like the money can come as it is helpful and useful for you to share your inner gifts. And therefore it takes you away from this idea of being deprived of something or lacking something or missing out. It washes away those thoughts and beliefs. So, for me, at first I started to pray and study the Course and feel the love in my heart. And then Jesus said, now we travel. And I said, travel? Don't you have to have money to travel? I don't have any money. And he said, I'll take care of all that stuff. I take care of everything. You just be happy and let the love come through you, and I'll handle all the rest. And that's why it takes a bit of faith and trust to allow that, because our old conditioning always was seeing things in terms of form, abundance in form or poverty in form. And he says, no, it's abundance in mind or poverty in mind. He said the form is not what's important. The form is just how things appear. So it's good that we talked yesterday, and you were talking about you wanted life to be easy. Yeah, that's good. Life with the Holy Spirit is easy. It can be very easy. And you felt you were lazy, but you saw already that was just a self-criticism. You were saying, what's the difference between working and not working? Why is there such a big difference? I've had that all these years. I've had pet cats, and I remember when I was in university and graduate school, I was all caught up into papers and exams and final exams, and my cat would look at me like I was crazy. I would be, and the cat would look at me like, what's the problem here? Come out and look at the moon with me. You know, he'd want to go look at the moon. And I'd be like, I have exams and papers, and he would just, even now with my cat here, you know, if I went to ISO, I said, are you working? He would just give me a funny look, because he doesn't understand work. You know, it's really just it's an ego concept. You know, it's nothing more than a concept. And people sometimes ask me, David, are you working all the time, or are you on vacation all the time? I said, I don't know, you tell me. You know, because I don't really see those things as opposites. You know, I don't see the world of opposites. When you start to really give what's in your heart, the opposites of the world disappear. I could say, you tell me, if you think I'm playing all the time and vacationing, then that's what it is for you. If you think I'm working all the time, some people think I am working all the time. But it's the meaning that we give to situations. Now, if you felt happy during this movie, then I think that's a good sign. That's a very good sign. Because happiness, genuine happiness, comes from forgiveness. You know, where we forgive the victim, we forgive the thoughts of victimization and abuse. That is what forgiveness is. You know, that's why Eckhart Tolle is always ha ha ha. He's always laughing because he's in the presence of the moment, and it does look funny. The world does start to look funny. So thank you for sharing your witness of that you had that you're happy. That's beautiful. I'm glad. I join you in that. I join you in that.
Okay, we can go to Angie and Wesley next. You guys can unmute.
Hey, hey, David, hey, everyone. Hello. Hello, David. The light has come. Yeah.
The great rays.
Oh, yeah, right on. You want to go? Okay, so we were watching the movie, and it got to the point where her name escapes me. She got fired, and then was just saying, "Yeah, I want to go forward with this lawsuit against but can't remember his name." And then our internet cut out. But what happened inside me right before that is there was all this pressure that was coming up, watching these things that have been going on in my mind, blonde women, and feeling this the game of playing being powerless and needing power and like wanting to get this from making someone else look powerless. And it just brought up this kind of dense feeling emotion. I couldn't really identify it. It's probably a bunch of guilt. And then it came up, and for some reason the analogy of volcano comes up. It came up and then just slowly started to boil over the edge. And I watched, and I'm like, I just have to let go and let this happen. And then the internet cut out. And then there was just this awareness that this is absolutely perfect and this is what needs to occur. And then Angie and I started expressing, and we missed the last half of the movie and the breakout sessions. And in that process of that, I saw how the identity of being a man has all of these things associated with it. And I could just see that I'm not that. And then underneath that, it was clear that it was the identity as a body that was creating the whole thing. And I just felt this fear of death of the body, death of the identity, whatever, the ego. And I just started to cry and cry. And I saw that once that whole identity is gone, then that's where spirit enters. That's my identity is then Jesus. My identity is then the Christ. And I just felt the need for safety and control and trying to make others feel powerless in my thoughts, in these fantasies, and giving that up. Just it brought up a bunch of fear as that's part of my small self was falling apart. And yeah, I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And yeah, I feel really grateful. And I asked for this a couple nights ago. A friend of mine from Edmonton posted that I've been on a spiritual journey with seemingly in tandem as a mirror for 12 or 13 years or something, through a lot of similar types of worldly seeming experiences. And she posted a video about a woman being stalked. And this woman videotaped this man walking behind her for 40 minutes. And so I recognized my mind in this. I saw my projection and the guilt underneath of it. And then I looked up and I saw police cars in front of me with their lights on, and I was like, whoa, well, this is the same thing, the victim and the victimizer. And so I replied to her video and I said, there's no victim. And like, I'm sitting here and seeing myself as a victimizer and watching this projection of these police cars. And you're just projecting this video that you posted onto the screen through the mind. I'm doing that also. And it's not what is the essence of this. It's the feeling inside. The anxiety is like what to follow. And so I said this and some other things, and I felt like I was coming from a place of love. And I had the thought about empathy and the type of empathy that I've been taught, and the type of empathy that I was actively experiencing whilst I was in Edmonton. And then I decided, no, I'm not going to do that same thing. And I'm going to choose what I see as true, which is there's no victim and no victimizer. And maybe that's the unconscious part that's coming up, is the guilt around feeling like I'm a victimizer. And then the feedback I got from many people, some of whom I have known, was very much like against, seeming like attack against me. And so I started doing lesson 23. I just had a bunch of symbols show up, 23, 23, and I was like, oh, I need to do lesson 23. So I started doing it, and I kept doing it, and I've kept doing it, and watching how these attack thoughts are creating this reflection for me, and experiences Angie and I had moving from an island to where we are now, Tulum. There was military and a police dog, and this guy who got angry, and okay, well, this is all arising from my own attack thoughts. And so it's unraveled watching this movie. And yeah, there's a lot of guilt. And I guess if there's any question, it's like, well, how do I let that up? I mean, I prayed deeply and said, show me, heal this, like take this from me. And then the lesson today is like, what I'm seeing is I want to see this as my salvation, not as a form of grievance. And so just constantly looking at everything that's arising is, this is for my salvation, this is for my salvation. And trusting that each step along the way it's going to unfold and open this and release. But I mean, I don't know if there's anything else I need to. I think that's the thing, is there's still an I that wants to do, and I need to let go of that and fully let go into the trust of the Spirit that has me. So yeah, that's my miracle from the movie and the last couple days. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's so beautiful. That when I read something you posted on Facebook today, this morning, about going to the Tulum area. So that I put a name there of a friend, because she was the one that was dancing. Carrie was dancing on our Friday broadcast too. So I thought that's perfect. But it's so beautiful. It's you and Angela are so transparent. You know, you're just right on the edge, and even with the power going off, you just took that in stride as, okay, this is our time to have our process right there, and that's so beautiful. It's just you're really rolling with the flow of things, and every moment is very full when you just go for the healing that way. And it's so beautiful. So I'm always so happy to see you both on our movies, because you're just showing us very transparently the healing that you're going through, and it's a great inspiration, I think, for everyone. So thank you. And Angelica, she's got.
Gracias, David.
Thank you, David.
Para mí,
For
me
me,
mostró
it
fuertemente
showed
la
me
película
very strongly the movie
el deshacerse
of the undoing.
concepto de
Angie,
víctima.
sorry, can you put it onto Spanish language so we can hear the translator?
Ahora sí, now?
Yeah, that's good.
It showed me, the movie showed me the concept of victim, how it's being undone very strongly within me. The belief that I have, strong belief that I have, that women are victims of men. And I could see how in the movie of my life, a lot of these things happen, that I have to be people pleaser with men so that I am not their victim and not listen to the voice in my heart. And it's like believing that women are victims and that they have to please because the power is for men. And I was able to see all of that is being undone. Even with the situation with my mother, a lot of anger came up that she is a victim of my brother and that I'm a victim of my brother too. And I was able to let go of all those emotions and surrender and see my brother innocent, see my mother as innocent. And now with the movie, even before a few days ago, we had a conflict between both of us. And it was like in that moment, I was handing it over. I was super present, and I just felt the guidance was, go and walk. This is not real. You are not the victim of Wesley. And I just followed the guidance. He was very angry, and he didn't want me to go out and walk. But the guidance was that I would just go and walk, that wasn't happening. So I went for a walk, and I started meditating, and I came back very calm, and the healing happened, that I didn't see myself as a victim, and I didn't see him as the victimizer for no one. And now with the movie, the same. I could see the innocence, I could see his innocence, and undoing but I see how Jesus is undoing everything, all that false concept that there are no victimizers and victims, that we can see innocent in everyone, but just listen the voice of the heart and listen Jesus' guidance to be happy, and that from there it extends the truth to everyone, and trusting in that beyond anything else. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelica. You look like the old TV show, The Newlywed Game, and you both got the right answer, and you both are like, yes. All right. Ding, ding. Thank you. Oh, sweet. Oh.
Okay, well, we could go to Louise next. You can unmute there.
Hi.
Hi, Louise.
Okay.
Yes.
Phew. Okay. I wrote a little bit because okay, I'm very confused right now. The movie was really, really intense for me, and I was asking myself, why do we have to expose the emotion when we are seeing that it's just an ego's game, you know? And it reminds me my mother when I was young, and my father was very violent, and she just said, "Okay, don't talk, don't." And I felt so much anger, but couldn't talk, couldn't say a word or a move, because don't say anything. And in my first relationship with the father of my children, it was the same, just in front of me, just 2 inches in front of me, and say, I will kill you, I will kill you, I will kill you, do that or don't do that. And that anger, but in the same time, it always pop up that it's just a game. And then if I say it's just an ego game, I beat myself up. I'm so angry at myself, and I just fall down, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what is my question, but it's about exposing the emotion, maybe, and if I don't, I turn it back to myself. And it's not helping me to say that it's just an ego's game, because it stopped me completely to go farther, and I beat myself. That's what I want to share with you, and maybe you have something to tell me about that.
Yeah, I think what you've experienced in your life is two of the ego's most used defense mechanisms. One is denial or repression. Just like, shh, quiet, don't say a thing. It's just push it out of awareness. It's like a game of pretend, like, no, shh, pretend. And then the other is when we're looking for something, the ego wants something quick, but just saying the words is just ego's game. It doesn't free us. You know, it's almost like a minimizing attempt or dismissal in some way. Trying to just shrink it down to it's just the ego's game. And yet that doesn't help us break through. You know, that's also part of like being stuck. So that's where when you really can stop and pray and speak up what is important to be spoken up. It takes willingness and courage that we talked about to do this, because it's a whole new way for us. We didn't have any modeling. I didn't see that modeled by my parents. So I had to discover it at some point in my life. You know, when I was in my 20s, I started opening up and being shown some very healing ways that the Spirit wanted me to see, but I had to not only discover that it was possible, but then I had to actually practice it, which was a bit awkward. You know, we're just not used to this kind of openness and transparency. And even in the different communities that I've lived in over these last 25 years or so, that doesn't seem to the ego like an easy route. You know, being open with emotions, the ego would say that's dangerous. You're playing with matches. You can get burned if you start exposing emotions, because the ego says, well, that'll really light the flame. Then everything will blow up if you start exposing. So we do need to slowly build successes, like sometimes you say, where you can call and talk to Marga, and you know, you can feel the goodness, you can feel the healing in that, where you have a mighty companion that you can just talk to in more of a relaxed way. That's so different than the relationships that we've known in this world. Like you're describing the first husband, that's very intense. When we feel like we're living with a threat over us, or that constantly is only a couple inches away from us, this very dark threat. So I think that's the main thing, is be gentle with yourself, use the things like your talks with Marga and the things that are working for you, where you can feel a safety, you can feel a gentleness with it, and just let yourself slowly move in that direction. And know that if you keep going in that direction, there will be enormous benefits. Everything will open up. That's what I had to do. I was very shy. I didn't know what transparency was. I was so guarded that I didn't, get into a relationship until I was like 27 years old. And then as soon as I got into the relationship, the Course in Miracles came in, and then it was intense, because it was such a new direction from everything that came before. And yet I thought, well, okay, I guess I'm gonna hang in with this and really keep the faith and keep going in this new direction, even if it's intense. I felt like I had to be willing to walk through that. And I thank you for joining in like this, because we're here to support you in that. We know how much courage it takes to really do this. And oftentimes at the beginning, there are periods of disorientation or confusion that are there, because the new way is so different from what came before that it's a bit disorienting and confusing. But that's why we join. We need each other to join and connect this way and support each other. So thank you. Thank you for doing that for all of us. Sweet. Oh. It's beautiful. Oh.
Okay. I saw we had a physical hand up. Carol, did you have a question there, Carol?
Hi, Carol.
Olá. Hello, David. Good afternoon, everyone. I think what is moving me to express was really what Louise just shared. She spoke from a state of mind where she was deprived and she was not able to express herself. She was forbidden. And Carol, for her, it's very easy to express and to talk. And then A Course in Miracles came to my life and it fit in my life very well. But knowing that there are two thought systems, one that is filled with pain and a lot of noise and it's bad, and the other one with a huge state of peace, and having to expose this mind for healing. When I try to expose my thoughts of shame or feeling some sort of discomfort, I don't know if this is good to expose. Even if I have some mighty companions within the course, but sometimes I don't know how good it can be to expose your thoughts, because I think I'm very bitter and I don't have any love. So I can, what Ruth just shared and the couple before, that they are so connected. And I tried to have like some sort of romantic relationship, holy relationship with somebody. And I was in a situation in which I was exposing myself. And then he was very quiet and he was not really expressing. And I felt very confused. So now I said, I only need the Holy Spirit. I think there is a limit to expose yourself and share your thoughts. I really have to be quiet and shut my mouth. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a good point in that it has to be very guided and very much under prayer, that we can't expose these thoughts to anyone. And really, it is good always to go first and foremost to the Holy Spirit, because that is the most direct way to healing. And the only time when we really bare our soul and share our darkness and shame has to be a given opportunity from the Spirit, almost like speaking to a dear, dear friend who loves you unconditionally, and you can feel the safety at sharing the thoughts with no concern of something coming back to you. And so over the years, I've been very prayerful about, please guide me to opportunities. If there's something that I have been hiding and I have difficulty giving to the Holy Spirit, please bring me whatever would be helpful to release the darkness. And I do remember, even when I was in my 20s, I had a friend, and we would sit in his car, and I could share so much. We both could share so much with each other that the windows would get all foggy. We'd be out there for hours, but we would feel so open when we shared so deeply. And then when I began later on traveling around the world and doing retreats, long retreats, sometimes 4-week retreats and 6-week retreats, it would be when people would feel the safety and the trust was strong that they could share some of their darkest secrets or most shameful thoughts. And then they found it very helpful. It was a way of unburdening themselves. But I do agree with you that it's best to nurture and develop this connection with the Spirit, so you can offer the thoughts to the Holy Spirit. And then if there are times when they seem to still be there, those thoughts, they still seem to be there, then just to pray to have an opportunity to talk to someone where you can let them up and out. But it's not something that can be just done with anyone. When I first went to China, there was so much repression that I talked about no private thoughts and no people pleasing, and they formed these internet groups where they would get on and scream at each other. It wasn't really helpful. At least they were trying something, but they didn't quite understand the context of the healing. They just knew that they wanted to try something because they had so much buried shame and hurt. So, yeah, I'm glad that you can feel this connection with the Holy Spirit, and I join you that if there is something that's needed to help you to really open up any more, that is just shown to you in a very obvious way. And oftentimes it's not necessarily with a romantic partner. Like with your boyfriend, who was very quiet, that's like a sign that he's maybe not the best one to try that with. So I think that was something that you learned. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Carol.
Okay, well, we could go to Esther next. You can unmute there.
Hi, David.
Hi, Esther.
And a lot of healing going on. There were stories that came up from the past. The godfather that I had spoken to you about before, he was on trial for sexually molesting a young girl, and he wanted me to testify that he never had sex with me when he was having sex with me. And my mother gave me the opportunity to go to the EST training during this time. Mm-hmm. And they talked about no people pleasing and private thought kind of ideas. And all this stuff came up. And I was like, it was the first feeling of, not the first feeling of mania, but it was like everything was coming out. And I told her that night that I had sex with him, and she was able to help me, because in the basement of the parking lot, she yelled at the top of her lungs as God was coming out of her mouth, "I'm not letting you testify." And I was at an age that she could take that role and succeed. And I was really struggling with what these women were doing with the whether or not to tell and how to handle the truth. And she made that decision for me very easy. And I kind of was thinking, I probably chose her just for that lesson as my mother. The love that I experienced in that moment, it was like I was down on my knees when she was thundering that statement. And anyway, about the stories. So Alan and I talked during the break, and he was pointing out, and I saw it too, that the externals aren't causative. These stories are externals. And the first lesson you ever gave me was to have that experience over and over again, that the externals aren't causative. And I'm starting to get that lesson. and that I don't see myself as the story anymore is very freeing, because then you know, then the past serves no purpose anymore, because it doesn't exist, and I'm getting to experience that firsthand. Because the story is no longer causative in my mind. And I just wanted to know how I mean, I did tell my mother during the break how much I love her for that moment, but how can I really pay her back? What she did for me, I'll never be able to repay her for that. That's a love I don't feel I have.
Well, I think as you've talked about your mother, you know, that you care for her and love her very deeply, and you are wanting to be there for her fully and support her, and also to honor her decisions. And her gift to you was basically saying, I'm not going to let you testify. You know, you don't need to testify. It's like taking that away from you as like an option or something you would have to struggle with and deal with. And I think that that's part of your gift right now, that to your mother, as she's going through these things, these physical symptoms and difficulties, you know, with whether it's with her teeth or with various things that you've expressed. But your gift is the true empathy, you know, is to see her truly, and just being able to recall that moment of love is very powerful, because that is something that you have experienced and that you can give. That is the gift that you have to give. And really what the gift is, it's saying, I love you no matter the appearances. You know, that's what you're really practicing right now with what your mother's going through, and also with Alan and his issues that he's going through seemingly with the trading. You're still able to go inside and find that love and support, and love without trying to judge the situation or judge the circumstances. You know, that is our greatest gift that we can offer. So I think that's what the movie was showing us too. It was like there was a prayer to be truly helpful and truly supportive, and for anyone to really tap into that prayer, they had to let go of their former purpose for the relationship. I mean, when you think of it, Fox News was a business that was designed to make money by news. And the ones that were hired, they said, to keep people's attention. If you're on the air for 24 hours, they said, you have to have something that keeps people attention. So that was the underlying premise. It was all about making money, letting everybody be prosperous. But still, Jesus and the Holy Spirit used the situation for this deeper healing. Regardless of how the ego set it up, there's still this beautiful essence of a lesson that's always there. And it's always there for us to learn, to accept the lesson. And I think that's why we're watching movies together. We're here to really zoom into the lesson, to find the lesson of forgiveness. And I think it has to be carefully learned and practiced in order to be fully experienced. So that's why we practice this on a repeated basis with different movies, but we still have the same purpose every time. So thank you for your transparency. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, well, we could go to Sandas next. You can unmute.
Hello, everyone. Hello, David.
Hi, Sandas.
I love you all. Oh my God. As I was listening, I was looking at each and everyone who shared as myself, healing that aspect in me, because I can relate to every single one. And this movie, the movies you've been choosing, it's been really bringing a lot on the surface. And actually, I just told my psychiatrist yesterday, I'm sick of being sick. I'm sick of being 1 foot on the brake and 1 foot on the gas and living in terror. And I'm giving it to the Holy Spirit. I cut my hair. I'm like, this is it. I am here. Use me, God. But I want to be just like you. So, David, I want to be able to hear him out loud. He does speak to me, but he probably always speaking to me. I just don't choose to listen, like you said. So here's what happened. When you gave us the 10-minute break before we break out, I stayed and I prayed to the Holy Spirit. And I said, I'm going to meditate for that 10 minutes. And I'm going to share this with you because this is from the Holy Spirit. I said, what do I meditate on? What lesson? This popped up, lesson 82. It's a review. The light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness. My forgiveness is the mean by which the light of the world finds expression through me. My forgiveness is the means by which I become aware of the light of the world in me. My forgiveness is the mean by which the world is healed together with myself. Let me then forgive the world that it may be healed along with me. And then there's a suggestion, let me be at peace. Let peace extend from my mind to yours. I'm going to say to the whole world because, I'm angry with the whole world, whatever. So I share the light. I share the light of the world with you. And through my forgiveness, I can see this as it is. Let me not forget my function. I would not forget my function because I would remember myself. I cannot fulfill my function if I forget this. And unless I fulfill my function, I will not experience joy that God intended for me. And then it says, let me not hide my function from me. I would use this as an opportunity to fulfill my function. So this is the movie, is like that's an opportunity, and may threaten my ego, and this may threaten my ego, but cannot change my function anyway. And I am surrendering. A lot of things pops up, a lot, especially this movie, the last movie. It's like, once you're a victim from childhood, I think it becomes a pattern. I know, because then what I saw myself in that movie, yes, I was constantly being abused, but then I also used my femininity. And that's what I want to reveal. I also used my femininity to get what I want. The same thing with these ladies. That's the ego. The ego had a mission. And so, yes, you know what? Excuse my language, kiss asses, but you're going to get what you want. And that's not the way I want it. I want to be real, inside out, nothing but real, nothing but love. And thank you, everyone. Thank you. You are myself.
Oh, beautiful, Sandoz. Very healing. That's very healing for all of us. We can feel it. You're really going for it there. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's go to Claudia next. You can unmute.
Hola. Hi. I am so nervous. Well, this movie really moved a lot of things within me. I feel that the word that most impacted me was the word loyalty. When he said, but you have to show me your loyalty. Oof. That's when a lot of things came up. And during the recess that we had, a lot of things started coming up. And I was expressing in the group. And the first loyalty that I think I built up was with my father. I was brought up in a Catholic family, very beautiful. Really, I don't have any complaints. I don't have any violent topics or anything, but with a very strong morale. So that topic of sex it was like a taboo. So when I started watching this, I started feeling a lot of guilt, thoughts that I thought I had already released and they were not in me, and the guilt with sex. That before I married, if I had sex, that was gonna say something from me, that my father won't accept me. If I was pregnant before marriage, he was not gonna accept me. And it really moved a lot of things within me. Afterwards, I was married very young. We never had children, but my marriage finished because because of infidelity from my husband, and practically because the last relationship he had with another lady, he changed a lot with me. So I felt to finish this relationship. But afterwards of being divorced for some time, I started a relationship with a person that was married, and the guilt was horrible because it was like being on the other side. So all the judgment that I've had towards other people, especially to women, how do you get on with a married man? Now I was on the other side. And this movie really moved that within me very strongly. And even more, when I talk about this, I think if my father would listen to me saying to these things at my 40-something years now, it's like still like as if I still want to protect this image of my family, of myself in front of him, because it's very strong. And after I got divorced, I haven't been in another relationship, like, let's say formally, with this person for a long time. I don't see him, but it's very curious how it really moved everything within me, because I thought it was all behind. With this person, we haven't seen each other for more like a year, but I also feel that there were a lot of things that weren't said. In that moment, what I was doing was just getting away, cut any communication, but I was never able to express all that I was feeling. And it brings up a lot of, you stopped saying a lot of things that you needed to say, but now I wonder if it was necessary or not. It's like I'm questioning if this was needed to be said. But yeah, I'm like impacted because it feels very strong what I'm feeling right now. Very strong. So sometimes I ask God and Holy Spirit and I say, wait, why did you let me play this? First from one side, then after in the other side, what is it that I haven't seen? And yeah, I just want to give this over, and I would like to listen to you about this topic that I haven't seen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Claudia. Well, like you mentioned with your marriage, the reason relationships don't seem to work is because of the purpose for which the ego wants to use the relationship. So to the ego, it's like bodies together, minds apart. The ego actually doesn't want communication. It wants to bring the bodies together so it looks like a relationship, but it doesn't want the sharing of thoughts in the truest way, because that would be the Holy Spirit's purpose, is to share the same purpose and share the same thoughts, the thoughts of the Spirit would turn it into a holy relationship and have your heart open and feel this deep love. Even when you mention infidelity, you know, that seems to be a thing in form, but actually fidelity to purpose is the only helpful loyalty. So many people have told me I was so loyal to my family, or I was so loyal to my partner, or loyal to a particular person or situation. And I say, why not be loyal to peace? Why not be loyal to your sanity? Why not be loyal to your happiness? Like really, it's more of a loyalty to a state of mind. Because when we put the loyalty out into form, that's the ego's game. You know, and it's going to use it for some kind of guilt. In the movie, this Roger Ailes, you know, he would get to that certain point and he would say, I require loyalty. And then that's the big question mark. Okay, loyalty, what does that mean? And he had his own version of people doing what he wanted them to do. But that's the ego. That kind of loyalty is not what we want. We want loyalty to a shared purpose, loyalty to sharing our hearts, loyalty to open communication, which expands our awareness, you know, and makes us feel more connected to everyone. So it's good. Now you can start to discern that is the purpose now for relationship, is open communication and a shared purpose. And then now you can let that lead you forward, you know. Now you get clearer in that. It's not to me so much of importance with the bodies, because I know as I've traveled and collaborated with so many, the bodies seem to come and go. But the purpose is very strong, the purpose of sharing the Holy Spirit. And we're meant to see the Holy Spirit and hear the Holy Spirit in our brothers and sisters, and then extend it as well. And that helps it grow stronger. The Holy Spirit's like an idea, and the more we give that idea away, the more we're aware of that idea in ourself. So thank you for bringing that up and sharing your context, because that's the purpose, for us to really be clear. And that's a very good inroads, this idea of loyalty. We have to really be clear on what it means, because if we're not clear, then the ego will misuse it. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay, well, we could go to Elisa next. You can unmute there.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Lisa.
I knew I was going to be the next. I don't know why. Okay. So, wow. First of all, I feel very grateful for this workshop, for having the opportunity to join with all of you, with everyone. Because when they share, even during the small breakup groups, it was wonderful to listen to all of them. I was like, wow, I don't need to say anything. I put my hand down because I was like, wow, I think it's time for me to listen to what they have to say. And thank God I did, because the last sharing was very helpful during those small breakup rooms. And I was very thankful to hear how these, beautiful beings, they just open their hearts and minds. And that takes, like you said, courage, a lot of courage. So I feel very grateful to be in presence of them. It's very healing. I was thinking that it's just like pure gold, this, when I hear them sharing from their hearts and even sharing their deepest fears or secrets or whatever. It's like so healing and so helpful. So I'm very thankful. And some intensity also came out during the movie, of course. But I remember what you said to us before the ride started. You said, you stay with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Don't forget, you stay with them during the movie. So whenever I would feel any intensity, I would just remember, okay, Holy Spirit and Jesus, you're here with me. Okay, I'm here with you. Okay, and then things would go very, in a very smooth way. So it was helpful. Okay, and yes, I felt. I'm very grateful when people share, like, and when they are very transparent. I also felt something, I don't know, that seemed weird, but maybe it's not that weird. I don't know. When Roger was with Kyla, I think it was Kyla, and he was asking her to lift her skirt up higher, higher. And then he started, like, turning on, or however you call it. And I started feeling that too. Like, I started feeling what he would feel in that scenario. And I was like, why? And of course, then a lot of guilt came up, and like judgmental thoughts from the ego, like, oh, how can you feel those things? And oh, you're so bad and filthy and those things. A lot of, but I didn't really listen to them. Like, I just watched them and I let it go. And then when I saw Kyla's expression, and then I also pictured myself being her in that scenario, and I also felt what she felt. So I felt like the victimizer at one point, like, what was his name? George? Whatever. Roger
Ailes.
And then, but then I also felt like the victim, like Kyla, supposedly. So I was in both states, and both made me feel bad, like miserable. So then you said something about attacking thoughts, and thoughts of being attacked are the same. So I think, that was a good one. I wrote it down. But yeah, I felt a lot of guilt towards how I felt when I experienced the same feelings and thoughts that this man was experiencing while he was asking her to do that. I don't know why I felt that, but I let it up because it was so scary for me to see that in me, that I wouldn't let it up even. But I said, no, I want to let whatever up, I don't want it to be hidden there, whatever it is. So I let it up. And I tried to just stay as a witness and just watch the feelings, the emotions, the thoughts, and tried just to watch, not to identify with that. But it was a little, a little difficult maybe, but I think it's getting easier maybe, or lighter, because I think, it's a guilt. And the main problem, I think, is that we identify with that. We identify with those emotions, with those feelings, with the personal self, and we think we are that, and we feel terrible and guilty and miserable. But then I started to feel very good, because I then was able to detach from that personal self and all those feelings and thoughts. And I was like, whoa, this is a secret. Like, this is it. I mean, you just have to, it's just about detaching from that identity that we think we are. And so I just wanted to expose that. And also I could relate to what all of my sisters and brothers shared. And I also, sometimes I used to see, and maybe still now, I see men as abusers. Like, sometimes when I see a man showing up on the screen, a brother, I see an abuser. And when I hear the stories from my sisters of abuse and sexual harassment, I just start seeing them as abusers and like bad people, like mean, like they just want to abuse and abuse. But then I also sense something behind that. Those are like victim feelings, victimization feelings. But then behind that, I also see the victimizer feelings. And I feel that maybe I am the victimizer as well behind all that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So sometimes I feel that in a past life, I don't know, I don't remember, but sometimes I think that maybe in a past life I was a man, and I was a really abusive man or something in a past life, and now I am experiencing this life as a woman, and I don't know, maybe to heal or whatever. It's just an idea, but I'm starting to see that all that I hated from the outside, all the abuse that I would criticize, or when women are being abused or raped or anything, I'm starting to see that there's also that, I don't know, the source of that abuse. I think it's also in me. Like, there's this victim and victimizer.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful because actually that is the secret. That is the key. You're onto it. Because, as long as we think there's both, then we seem to keep drawing forth both witnesses. And even that scene you're describing where Kayla goes up there, first she's talking to her girlfriend, and then her girlfriend's like, are you stalking somebody? Because her eyes are looking around, and she's got her eyes on Roger's secretary. And she wants to make contact with the secretary. She wants to get in that elevator with the secretary because she wants something. She wants to move up. She wants to have career advancements. And so she definitely wants something. And then when she gets up to the room with him, after his small talk and, oh, you're very beautiful, and all the things that he says, and their little small talk, she does the small talk too. She wants to get to know Roger. Then he says, what do you want from me? Why did you come to visit me? So it's pretty clear that when our motive is to get something, whether it's some kind of gain for the body or gain for the personality self, whether it's fame or status or a better job or more money or whatever, then we're coming from a place of seeing our brothers and sisters in more like a commodity. We're going to them in an exchange mode, like we're actually trying to get something, and this is pretty common. I mean, even when you and I've talked about boyfriends and girlfriends, it's when you want something from the boyfriend, and then they don't seem to give that, whether it's just to call you and talk to you and care about you. Hey, Elisa, how's it going? How are you doing? How are you doing tonight? And so on and so forth. When they don't call repeatedly or whatever, then you can start to realize, oh, I'm got some kind of an exchange mentality going on here. And it's no different than if you go to the grocery store and you check out some produce and you check out the one that you really want, and you pay the price to bring that vegetable home. That's an exchange. But it's one thing to do it with a squash or an apple or something, or grapes, but to do it with people, then it's the same ego mentality, you know. It's like an exchange mentality. It's like a commodity. Like, I'll give something, but I want something in return. So yeah, I think you're onto it, because like even when you would join with Jesus or Holy Spirit during the movie, when I first was talking to you, you know, you were telling me honestly, you said, well, honestly, I don't know about Jesus or the Holy Spirit. At the beginning, when I talked to you, you were like, I don't know if I would use those words. I don't really like feel a connection. I'm not going to call upon Jesus or the Holy Spirit. And yet, the last few times, you know, that's all you talk about now. You're a convert. You've totally come out of where you were, and now you're actually taking them along on the ride. Yeah, and that is part of the secret to it, because when you're joining with the Spirit, you're not in that transactional mode. You're appreciating all your sisters and brothers for what they're sharing. You're listening, you're receiving, you're taking it in, you're feeling the gratitude for the blessing. It's showing you something very important, and that is very different than this kind of transactional view of human beings, of our brothers and sisters. So I think it's very profound, actually. I think you're onto the secret. So thank you. Thank you, Elisa. Beautiful.
We could go to Luz. You can unmute there.
Thank you. Wow. This was such a powerful, powerful movie for me. It brought back memories of a time when I entered the executive world as the private secretary of a director of a company, only to discover they were giving me all the dirty work to do. I had to make invoices of things that were not happening. Actually, they wanted to cheat on their US partners. This was a Mexico-based thing, but it was a company that had also a US partner. And I was there 2 years. The guy that brought me in, I had met him as a teenager. We were friends. Then I met him again when I got a divorce. He made a pass at me. I was very vulnerable and sad. And also, I was gorgeous. I was absolutely gorgeous as a young woman. And I used that to get something in the world of men. It was a bargain chip. And at that time, I was about to divorce my husband, and I got pregnant from this guy. So without second thoughts, I got an abortion, even though I was raised strict Catholic. And that was completely out of the question, but having another child was also out of the question for me. I already had 3 children, was on my way to a divorce, and I was not ready for any nonsense. I just wanted out. And I did. It went well. And then I didn't see him for quite a while. And then later on, I ran into him and he gave me this job at a time when I had lost 2 of my 3 jobs as a teacher. And I had 3 children to support on a very meager budget. My ex-husband was giving me like tiny bit of money just to not look bad, but I couldn't make ends meet. So this was a fairly well remunerated job, and I took it. And it's exactly like what the movie shows. Exactly. I had to play the game. I had to give in to have sex with this guy and also a couple of the people there, until I saw that I was the only woman executive in the company, and they were doing dirty business right and left, mixed with politics. They were into politic posts and stuff, all lawyers. So I could see I was a weak link, and I said, oh, if this domino comes tumbling down, I will be guilty. They will be innocent. So I left. I decided, planned a strategy. Thank God I have good brains, so I planned the strategy. So they had to fire me, and I could leave with a remuneration. And this movie brought all that up. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. But I remember this guy because I'm looking for all the possible emotions, negative emotions behind the illness the body is showing me. It's showing me you have to heal this. But right now, something else came up. Many years back, the 500 years of the arrival of Columbus into this land, they were having huge celebrations as if that was something to celebrate. And I was in a group of people. My spiritual practice was tied to the Mexican traditions, in the Aztec tradition, and we were doing some spiritual work in one of the main plazas of Mexico City. And I was walking with my companions, and suddenly, out of the blue, I can't explain that. As soon as I put my foot down, I felt I was going down under the ground as if it was not solid. And I saw myself watching a massive rape of soldiers attacking and raping women that were like sacred priestesses. And I could feel all the feelings of these women, of being scared, helpless, despair, physical pain, so many emotions, and all these emotions were going through me. I don't know how can this be. And I don't know how long it lasted. It was completely terrifying. And suddenly I heard a voice, a loud voice, physical voice saying, "You have to forgive this in your heart." And then it stopped, and I was back again in the middle of a plaza. I could barely walk or speak or anything. I could hardly catch my breath. But it took a long time to digest. is crazy. It was not only a vision, because I was not only looking at things, I was going through them. They were going through me. And I did my best to forgive all that at the time. And now I think that it's not like, I understand now that there is not like a private me or a private lifetime, but that these things of the ego are there, and we tap into this sources of violence, of whatever. But I still feel that I have to forgive all that in my heart, whether it happened to this person or not. It's just a question of letting go of the woman concept or the abuser concept and just pray. So I still have to let go of all that in my heart. Now I see. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Luz. Yeah. Wow. If the movie just gave you that awareness and that opportunity, then that's huge, because that sounds like it was buried very deep in your mind. And that seems to be it, that we sometimes get flashes of things that are overwhelmingly emotional, but it sounds like, yeah, when you were in Mexico City that time, it just came to you, and it also gives more of a broader context of healing, like we're healing beyond just a personal sense of self and personal things that we went through with different people and situations, but it's much broader than that. And I think even for people like Nostradamus, who were quite, had a skill of precognition and seeing things even before they happened, yours was kind of a flash of something maybe 500 years ago, or when Columbus came over. But for some, like Nostradamus, seeing things, wars and missiles centuries ahead of time, it's quite a forgiveness opportunity, because it brings it back to the mind and how powerful the mind is. So thank you for sharing that, because I did feel a bit of that too when I would go down to South America for the first time, and I would be in Colombia, and then I would be there for some days doing gatherings, and then huge protests would break out. That would be so massive that they would, clog the streets up and everything. And I'd say, what's happening? What are they protesting? And it was a lot of places I've been: Hawaii, New Zealand, Colombia. It was this sense of the indigenous people of the land that had been there and had their lifestyle and their culture and everything, and then some kind of perceived invading force that had come, and there was still a deep kind of wound or grievance around this sense of being taken over, or someone from the outside coming and taking over the land and the culture and the people. So it presents a lot of opportunities to just go into the mind. I think even when I think of Tulum and I think of the Aztecs and an entire species getting wiped out when seemingly viruses or whatever were brought over from Europe, and just in a matter of years, millions of people dying. That's the same kind of feeling that we're forgiving, but we're really starting to forgive the ego and this belief in an external enemy. That seems to be the common core there. But I'm glad that you were able to get in touch with that, because those things, yeah, it's just a triggered a memory from when you were much younger, and then it triggered other things that were somehow connected and related to those memories too. And it's almost like a chain of grievances, and then there's a chain of miracles that comes to take the place. So thank you. I'm glad we can all be a part of that. I'm glad you can share that with all of us. Thank you.
Okay, David, well, we have our last hand. Veronica, you can unmute there.
Hola a todos. Hi, everyone. I had so many things in my mind to share. That I already said it all through all my brothers and sisters in this session. There's a saying, I don't know if it's Mexican or I don't know where it comes from, but in my experience, it's a saying that I've heard from many years that if it's a small town, it's a big hell. And that has done a lot of damage in the relationships of, well, all the people that live in the town, or because they are sayings that they just brush over all the lives of everyone. For example, when I was a young girl, 24 years old maybe, I was invited to be a part of public in this town, Guasave. This is a small town in Sinaloa, and the job offer that I was invited, even though I was not coming from politics, I was coming from private accountant. And this invitation opened this feeling that I had to make a work that I lived with my father when I was young. My father would work with some presidents here in Guasave in several public places, and he was always serving. My dad really would give over into service, and he was an honest man. He was a man that would fulfill his word, and when he was doing his job, he would do it with all his being. My father, as a profession, he was a teacher. He was giving classes in middle school, primary school, and some technical schools, but primarily in the summary of his life, I was able to see him as an example to follow. I was very identified with his life. And in that invitation, I saw myself in him because I was invited to this position that he developed within public service and in the area of like supporting and helping children. And well, I wasn't able to stay in that position for a long time. One time the president called me to give me an apparent instruction. And when I was 24, 25 years old, I didn't look like the actresses in the movie with it's a very strong memory. It was very intense, the movie for me. But I was a girl, good behaved, well dressed. And after a lot of time, I knew certain things that were being spoken here in Wasabe. Well, in that moment that this president is talking to me, I went there to the meeting, and as I attended as if I was approaching my boss or the boss of the institution, and really there was a desire of manipulation so that I could get in a relationship with him sexually. I didn't feel very surprised in that moment. I took it as something that I could handle, to not enter in a process of trauma, and that I was feeling ashamed for what he was proposing to me, this man. And I didn't say, I didn't answer his proposition. I continued being like as nothing had happened. I didn't do, there was no situation in which I had to be compromised, but just by the fact that I was there privately with the president in that moment, and that I went into this office for a private door, also an exclusive door, in a practice that people, the gentlemen, they would get all the ladies specifically for that kind of relationships. Well, I saw myself like tangled in all these things. And for me, that action then, in which I didn't have any mind training at all at that time, not at all, but I did have all that structure in my mind that when a lady gives a bad step, she is no longer the same between men and in society and everybody else. For me, it was a big, big sadness. And for me, that smile that I had then, of joy and happiness, it just freezed completely. I didn't come back to being in that job. I was just in that job 2 more days, and I entered in a depression, very, very deep depression. And I wanted to expose this because in my heart I am feeling a lot of gratitude. Gratitude that healing gives, because my smile and laugh, it came back when I met this community. It was more than half of my life that I didn't smile or laugh as I laugh now, without really enjoying this happiness of saying, I love you, you look so handsome, but not to reach some kind of relationship or or that I'm looking for a sexual relationship or a private interest, but just saying I love you to any one of my brothers and sisters, to say with my whole heart that in that time, really, my heart was really yearning for that. David, through your 34 years of giving yourself over to this wonderful course, which is A Course in Miracles, really, I have no words. And for me, this is the miracle of miracles, to have come back to laugh after I saw you laughing with that love, with that happiness, with that joy, with that part that it has nothing to do with this small town, big hell. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Well, you're back. You're coming back into your love and your heart. So it's very natural. But we love seeing your face and your transparency and hearing of your miracles and the turnarounds and things. And it's also true how you even when we look back at certain situations and relationships, we can be honest and look at the motive of how we got into it. And then we can see in retrospect, oh, that didn't go very well. But now we have a new choice. We have a new choice. We have a new life. So it's so beautiful. Well, thank you all so much. It's just been so precious. I don't know, the seed for this movie started pretty early on this week, and with this being a topic for us, all the way from the authority problem onto all the other ones, they all kind of work together to show us that we can escape this. We don't have to hold on to this body identity. And then there's a gift for us to share, to offer our hearts and to be available for one another in this awakening is so precious. So we have that right in front of us now. And we also have each other. So that makes it more certain and secure that our success is guaranteed by God, because we're walking together. So thank you so much. I knew this would be a pretty intense experience, an intense movie, but thank you for going through the journey together with me on this. And this was our experiment here the last Saturday of the month. We welcomed our Portuguese-speaking friends to join us. So this is a beautiful, inclusive event now with English and Spanish translations and Portuguese translations. So I feel like our invitation is growing, and our brothers and sisters are joining in with us. So thank you again for joining with us, and God bless you. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And we'll just keep trusting the Spirit will show us the way. So blessings. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.